I'm Razikan Shaheed. I'm with Nation Time Judicial Research, and what we do is a nationwide jailhouse lawyers collective, and what we do is free legal research for individuals across the nation, political prisoners, and anybody. And we have maybe like 300 or 400 individuals on our mailing list that we teach to do legal research so they can teach other individuals to do legal research, and that they pass them skills on everywhere we go. So even incarcerated, you know what I mean? We still put out the work.
Thank you so much for that. And people must understand, as a result of our condition, anyone who resists in any manner can become a political prisoner. So So this is one of the arms of resistance within the political system, within the political structure. And it must be understood that because we have to go to the law, because of our weakness politically, we deal with a law that works against us. And this is exactly what's happening with Mumia Abu Jamal and all other political prisoners. The law is meant to defeat us, and yet we are at the behest of that law, which it works against us. And we have people like Razikan Wali Shaheed, who does his best to work with this institution to encourage the courageous Lynn Stewart-like defense approach, which we are not getting much of today. And so without further ado, yes, thank you for coming on, Razikan. Would you like to say something else?
Yeah, man, I was truly inspired and energized by the conversations that was going on today, especially the anti-colonialism that we're trying to get rid of. But we'll never be able to reverse anti-colonialism as long as we allow ourselves to be shepherded by political groups and organizations, that maintain the status quo. I had to send a letter to, although I like Joe Madison on the Black Eagle, you know what I mean? But what they wind up doing is allowing us to feel defenseless or defeated, hopeless. You know what I mean? Here's a Clarence Thomas. He'd been on the bench. Atrocious. It was an insult to put him on the bench for the way they put him on the bench. You know what I'm saying? And then once he gets on there, they're saying that all the illegal things that he's done is nothing they can do about it, which is a lie. But the Democrats is making the resistance a passive resistance where people don't get upset and don't want to do anything about it. Now, if he was a Democrat, he would have been gone. They had an individual called Abe Fortas. I don't know how many people might remember him. He was a Supreme Court justice. He was caught getting $15,000 for speaking engagements, and they had to remove him off the bench for that. I mean, what Clarence Thomas did was illegal. It was against the law. And even when they was always saying that Trump couldn't be indicted because he was a sitting president, that is not a law. That is something they made up to accommodate Nixon and his scurrilous vice president, who was on his way to jail. I mean, we have to stop allowing ourselves to be put to sleep by individuals that claim to be working for us. The Democrats are just as worse as Republicans. I'm not saying vote for Republicans. I'm saying vote for somebody that's going to do you some good. And they're not doing that for us.
Well, thank you so much for that. That is the obvious, but we need reminded of it. And when you say Clarence Thomas, we must remember who financed his becoming a Supreme Court justice. It was Republican money, apartheid, South Africa, Israel, and reactionary elements in America. It had nothing to do with Black people. He wasn't put there.
And don't forget about the Democrats. They were in power. Joe Biden and 11 Democrats put Clarence Thomas on the bench.
Exactly.
Joe Biden, all inspector, they were the head of that individual group at that particular time.
Thank you.
Hope people check it out and look at our history. Man, I mean, every time it turns around, it don't be the ones that call ourselves our friends is the one that be knocking us in the head.
Thank you so much for that. And the struggle continues. And we are here to talk about political prisoners. And what is a political prisoner?
Okay.
Everyone on this program is a potential political prisoner. As a matter of fact, many of us on this program have been in the gulags of America. And I call them death camps because it is different. It's the same as the law for us is. It is different for us being incarcerated, because you must understand a man who shot the president is free, and Mumia Abu Jamal is innocent, and he's inside the death camp. And we mean death camps. They mean to keep him there because we are weak politically. We lack power. We don't understand the basics of power, the basics of money. For example, way back when we were fighting for community control of the education system, what did that mean? It didn't mean just an interpretation of history. It didn't mean just to be included in the history. What it meant was money. When you buy a quart of milk, a loaf of bread, whatever you do, part of it is tax money. And the tax money comes back to your community through hospitals, schools, roads, infrastructure. And the contracts for those problems are what gives a community economic power. The contracts to solve those problems are what gives you economic power. And we do not get them. This is what community control means. They never gave us the boot, even though we earned the boot. We created the boot. We are the reason for the success of the boot. They say, pick yourselves up by your own bootstraps, and they say you cannot have boots. This is what community control means: economic control with which to build power. They hold the purse strings. That's how they create these colonial administrators, those who will do whatever to have a living. And as we fight for these basic, it's because we do not understand the basic. We cannot go anywhere without community control of our dollars. Jackson, Mississippi, states' rights interceded. They organized and they developed a community that would vote for a person of color who would make changes. So what happens? The state intercedes with federal money and directs it otherwise. And who brought back state rights? Bill Clinton. And we don't understand that. We talk about the first Black president was Bill Clinton. No, my brothers and sisters, he was the enemy. We see Ronald Reagan, the communicator, should have been in jail for treason. What was his treason? To go to a foreign power and say, just hold off, don't free those prisoners. And when we get elected, we'll make a cocaine gun deal with Colombia, a triangle to enslave people of color again. He should have been jailed for treason. We talk about foreign intervention. And they say O'Malley, just having been gone to Russia, should be jailed for treason. He just went there. He didn't ask them to do anything, and they didn't ask him to do anything. But here we have a president we called a great communicator who was guilty of treason. And so it has nothing to do with innocence or guilt as they present it. It has to do with a struggle for self-determination, self-defense. This is the no-no in this society for people of color. And we must always keep that in mind. But first we have to define what is for self. And that's what this organization does. We define clearly what we want for ourselves, what we demand for ourselves. And when we understand that, then we will be on our way to justice. We call this elusive thing freedom, but what is not so elusive is power. We have a capitalist system.
Right.
In order to have power in a capitalist system, you must control the capital. We do the best we can. When we see someplace like Tulsa, Rosewood, whatever, when people took what little they had and controlled it, we saw the reaction of the community, of the white oppressive community. This is why we say self-defense. But we didn't we didn't have to have Tulsa or Rosewood. What we have to do is recognize what is basic for all living things. And the most basic thing for all living things is self-defense. And to prosper, we have to have self-determination to determine for ourselves. This is what we are doing with this group. And we must recognize that when we get involved in that, understanding, working towards self-determination, we are in the crosshairs. That is the crosshairs of a weapon to be targeted, as Omali Yeshiteli is, as all of our leaders have been. And so number one must be to defend the people who the system goes after. And we are talking about developing a strategy to come out from under this oppression. And so these people who are best at developing strategies to defeat this system become political prisoners. And so we must say, if you resist, you will become a political prisoner. We want you to resist, and we will support you with everything we have. Right. And without that understanding, we're whistling in the wind. So my brothers and sisters, as I said before, many of the people you have heard on this program have been political prisoners and are likely to become political prisoners again. And I call for one, let us go down and bring folks with us with self-defense. No one can be against self-defense except those who would rather that you did not defend yourself. Those who would rather that you would go along to get along. And they put folks in front of us. We call them colonial administrators. We say no to colonial administrators. We say no to acquiescence of oppression. We say yes to freedom. Uhuru, my brothers and sisters, freedom, uhuru. And thank you.